Welcome back to Dad and Daughter Reads, a book club podcast. I'm your host, James, and this is episode 20. Today, we're starting a brand new book, Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. The book is divided into 3 parts, and in this episode, we'll be covering part 1, titled Early Style. But before we get into it, let me introduce my co-host and daughter, the only person I trust to read between the lines and roast me when I miss the obvious. Here's Miranda. How have you been the last 2 weeks, and what have you been reading?
Hello. I've been busy. Busy the last 2 weeks. Just, the weather's better, so I have a lot of friends, so I'm always booked and busy. This past weekend, I went to Gov Ball, which is like a music fest here in New York City, up in Queens, and saw a couple people I wanted to see. Honestly, I kind of went because all my friends were going. But it was still nice to listen to music, although Saturday was terrible because it was raining. But yeah, other than that, just been kind of chilling, working, doing my thing. I finally finished, what's the last one? Stone Sky?
The Stone Sky.
Finally finished that.
Yeah.
Last week. Yes.
How was it? The ending. What do you think about the ending?
What did I think about the ending? I don't know.
Okay.
For some reason, that book was just really hard for me to get through. It did get exciting towards the end, so yeah. I definitely was working through it faster towards the end.
I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. I know the main character died, right?
Yeah, spoilers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that book's 7 years old at this point.
Yeah.
All right.
But yes. Well, and then, the whole thing at the end is it's him telling she's like a stone eater now, right?
Right.
Which I feel like we had known for a while.
Yeah.
I did eventually like the back story of Hoa once I finally figured out what the hell they were actually doing, because I still was very confused as to what they were doing.
Oh, right. Yeah, the stone eaters.
Yeah, before, which was before they were stone eaters too, because I think they were actually just they were also aura. How do you say that word? How do you say it?
What is it?
Origin. An origin.
That's how I said it. Origin.
Did you say origine?
I did not.
Or did you say oregano?
Oregano.
I
don't remember. I think I just said origin. I don't know. It's probably wrong, though. It sounds wrong.
But I think that's what they were.
An orogene. Yeah, orogene is what it was.
Yeah.
Because I guess it plays off the word gene, G-E-N-E.
Sure. But anyway, I don't know. I just felt like by the third book, I just wanted more action throughout the whole thing. And there just wasn't enough for me. I always liked Nasun's story, though.
Yeah.
I also wish there had been maybe a little bit, the daughter. I also wish there had been maybe a little bit more on Shafa. I feel like I didn't get enough about him. Because in the second book, there were a few chapters that were in his point of view, but they never wrapped up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Not my favorite series I've ever read. It started off strong. I feel like the first and second books I liked. Then in this third book, I just was kind of okay, we got to get somewhere.
Yeah, I would say the first book was the best, obviously, because of the twist. And then book 3, I think I'd rank a little higher than book 2. I think I would give those 2 books probably 4s, and then the first book a 4.5.
I like the second book better than the third book. There just wasn't enough. I just feel like a lot of the stuff that I was being told in the third book, I should have been told earlier, and we should have had a little bit more excitement. Personally.
Okay.
I did like the end. I did like the end. Yes, I did.
Okay. I like the end too. So
I did like the end, but that's it. And then I started this book, but I haven't really. I'm trying now. These last 2 weeks are a huge blur. I don't really think I've watched anything new.
Yeah.
I've just been mostly hanging out, running around, doing
Still
things.
keeping up with Murderbot, because I haven't even watched I haven't watched the latest episode. I was probably going to watch it tonight. Yeah, I haven't had time.
Yeah, I watched it. It was good. Yes, I watched it. It was good.
Yeah. Mm. I
But
still
other
have
than that,
like 3 episodes of Severance season 2 to watch too.
oh my.
I ended up watching some Vietnam War documentary, and then I watched the Earnhardt documentary.
Oh, I actually, okay, yeah, I watched the Stanley Tucci documentary where he's like in Italy eating food, and now I'm watching a documentary about breads around the world.
Breads around the world.
Yeah, and let me tell you, now I've added things to my bucket list now. I'm like, now I got to go to Istanbul and eat sanit, and now I've got to go to Guatemala and have their tortillas. I'm like, I was like, this is great. I love food documentaries. I love them, especially when they revolve around culture, like going to
I
different
haven't
places.
watched too many food documentaries, I don't think.
Well, the Stanley Tucci one's really good. He's just like going all over the different regions of Italy and like talking to people and eating their foods and stuff. That one was a little bit tough because I'm vegan and there was a lot of meat processing, but
Right.
I got through it because I still really enjoy learning about people's cultures. And also everything out there is so much things are processed out there different than they're processed here. So they don't have a lot of factory farming going on out there.
Yeah.
So I'm not as like mad about it. It still is kind of a tough watch, but I love learning about culture. And then the Breads of the World one's really good too. So if you're into food documentaries like I am, highly recommend those food documentaries.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. How about you?
All right. Well, I went to an exotic pet zoo.
Oh, yes.
Got to hold a baby kangaroo and pet a 3-toed sloth, and that was cool. And what is it? The big rat looking thing.
The capybara?
Capybara, yeah, capybara. Those things are big because she said that the one I sent the picture of to you was still like only 10 months old, and it's gonna like double in size. I'm like, oh my god, that thing's already huge. So yeah, that was fun. And then I went to the Cracker Barrel 400 NASCAR race, which was a lot of fun actually. Mm-hmm. Everybody actually had fun. Even Ava and Mia liked it. So
nice.
And it was loud. Oh my god, when they first started, oh wow.
Did you have headphones?
Yeah, we had earplugs in. But when they first start, it's like 39 race cars bunched up together.
Right.
And they're just flooring it, right? So it's so loud. And we were right on the start-finish line too. So we had really good seats. Yeah. So yeah, it was fun.
Nice.
And then, because I used to be in a NASCAR a long time ago, and my favorite driver was Dale Earnhardt, but he died at Daytona. I stopped kind of watching after that and paying attention to it. That got me into wanting to watch this Earnhardt 4-episode documentary on him that just came out, and it's really sad actually because he was known as a hard-nosed kind of guy, right? His nickname was the Intimidator, and he would bump people and do anything to win a race. And his son Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was also a big-time Winston Cup driver. I say Winston Cup, that's because that's what I'm used to. It's actually Winston doesn't sponsor it anymore, but anyway, he was a big Cup driver. His dad, Dale Earnhardt Sr., didn't show any emotion towards him or anything.
Sure.
And then towards the end, he did, like about a year or two before he ended up passing away, and that's what they were showing, how he was such a hard-headed guy, and then eventually he learned that he needed to show his kids that he loved them and stuff, and then he ended up dying not long after that. So it was sad because of that, because he was just getting to that point where he could show emotion and not be that kind of person. Like the only thing that matters is racing. So,
right.
But he was a good racer. I mean, he won 7 championships and like 76 races, which is pretty high. So he's probably one of the all-time best drivers.
Yeah. Well, and at least he started feeling something a little bit more before he died.
Right.
At least they got somewhere.
He died at Daytona on the last lap. And I don't know if you know the story. So he ended up owning a team which had 2 cars. And one of the cars was driven by Dale Earnhardt Jr., and they were in the Daytona 500. And on the last lap, both of his cars were in first and second place that he owned. And he was like in about third or fourth place. And he was blocking other drivers so they couldn't get up and catch him because his son was in second place and his other car was in first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of got nudged and he went straight front first into the wall at about almost 200 miles an hour.
God.
Yeah. And that's what killed him. But his 2 cars went first and second in the race. So it was kind of bittersweet, right?
That's awful. And his son was one of them?
Yeah, his son got second. And
you get out of the car and you're like, oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Can't even enjoy it.
Yep. So, yeah, because it's funny because one of the cars I noticed on the documentary, one of the cars he got in a wreck with, the driver got out and went over to the side where Earnhardt was in, the side of his car, and he tried to help him, but he was already dead because he died on impact.
Sure.
And then later on, when Michael Waltrip, who was the guy who won the race, who worked for Dale Earnhardt because it was his car that he owned, he was, celebrating because he didn't know. So he's got the trophy in his hand, and this other driver comes up and whispers something in his ear. And he's telling him that Dale was dead. And then from then on, you can just see it on Michael Waltrip's face. Right. He wasn't celebrating anymore. And so, yeah, it's fucked up.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Hey, downer.
Well, here's something else sad. I also watched The Turning Point, the Vietnam War. So, that didn't turn out too well for anyone either.
No, it sure did not. Sure did not.
So, yeah. So that's what I've been watching. Just terrible things that make you sad.
Well, sometimes we need a little catharsism. Sometimes we need to be sad.
Yeah. And as for reading, I haven't really, I read a book called Make Time, which is a productivity book. So I wanted to read that for work. So basically it just tells you, the whole gist of it is to try to make time, pick one thing that you're going to get done that day and make time for it, block time out for it and get it done. And then other tips on how to make sure you do that. So it was okay. So I'm still reading Expanse book 4. I haven't even read a single friggin' word in the last 2 weeks of that because I've just been too busy. And now I'm reading a book that's very exciting. It's called, Continuous Integration and Continuous Delivery, a Practical Guide to Designing and Developing Pipelines. So that's for work.
Oh.
For work. My new job. So yeah, that's exciting. I know. That's always fun to read stuff like that.
Sure.
No, but it will help for work. So.
Well, I forgot to mention actually part of my 2 weeks. An exciting thing that I did was I walked from the very top of Manhattan to the very bottom.
Oh, right.
I forgot about that because when you started talking about how you were at the zoo, I was like, oh my God, that's right. Because that day we were sending me pictures. I was in the middle of walking.
Yeah.
It went, I did it. I did the whole thing. I started at the very top in Inwood and we ended at the very bottom in Battery Park. That's 16 miles. I clocked about 38,000 steps.
Wow. That's a lot.
It was 38,000 steps. It was 1,200 calories. So in theory, this walk is really only supposed to take 6 hours. It took us 11.
Wow.
Not because we weren't booking it, because we were just dilly-dallying, and we dilly-dallied too much. Dillied too much because there were places that we wanted to stop at, but then also friends kept joining and leaving, and we stopped at a restaurant for like an hour. We stopped and got drinks at one point in Midtown. So it took 11 hours. It took 11 hours. We got up to the top of Manhattan, I think around like 9:30. Or no, we Ubered at 9:30, so we probably got there at like 10-ish, and we didn't hit the bottom until 9 p.m.
Wow.
And those last 3 miles were hard.
I bet.
The last 3 miles were so hard. But we did it, and it was super fun because me and my friend Sophie did the whole thing. Like, we started from the top to the bottom. We had one of our friends join us, like, in Harlem-ish, and she made it all the way to the bottom from there. And then we had a few other friends join us who mostly walked through, like, all of Central Park. So it was fun, just like hanging out with friends, walking around, seeing New York City. I stopped at that mansion I told you about where George Washington used to hang out or whatever.
Right.
And I sang some Hamilton there.
Okay.
I'll have to send you that. I'll have to send you that video.
Okay.
I was like, we are outgunned, outmanned.
Oh, boy. Was this after you had already been drinking?
No, this was pretty early on because it's at the very top.
You just still had a lot of energy at that point.
I had a lot of energy still. I think it was only like an hour or 2 hours in at that point. So yeah. But yeah, so I did that. Cross that off my bucket list. It was super fun.
That's cool.
It was exhausting. But honestly, I didn't really start feeling like pain until we like got out of Midtown. So over halfway until my back and my feet started hurting. So I call that a win.
Yeah.
Also, we also have this giant pigeon sculpture right now in the city. It's like literally just like a statue of a giant pigeon. And I got to see that, which was really exciting.
I couldn't have made it more than 30 minutes. My back just started hurting. My back starts hurting. Well, I had back surgery, so I have an excuse.
Sure. No, my lower back's been starting to hurt more lately. So that's fun for me.
Yeah. It's not
fun at all.
No.
But yeah, so I did do that. So yay me. Big accomplishment.
That's good. Yeah. Cool.
Well, all right.
All right. Well, there's no social media book buzz, and I'm probably just going to nix that segment altogether because I don't have time for social media at this point in my life.
I don't get any book talk stuff.
The book I read, Make Time, says get rid of all those. Delete them.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I deactivate my Instagram every other week at this point. I'm deactivated right now until I go to Ireland. So
yeah, I don't really pay that much of attention to them unless somebody sends me a message on them. So we can get straight into the book Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang.
Let's do it. I love this book. Just want to start off by saying I love this book so far. Of course, we've got time for it. We've got time for it to turn, but I hope it doesn't. I have high hopes. This book is super up my alley, so let's get into it.
All right. So it starts off with a 1-paragraph prologue where the main character is in a bathroom. There's a wing of a museum being dedicated in her name. And Matilda, at this point, whoever that is possibly dead. So yeah, there you go. Starting off with a mystery a little bit. So chapter 1. So we're going into the past. So this is another book where we're going to be jumping back and forth in time. Matilda, I'm saying that wrong. It's not Matilda. It's Mathilde. It's French. I looked it up and I forgot.
Mathilde.
I think
that was Italian.
Mathilde and Inca are both freshmen at the Berkshire College of Art and Design, aka BCAD, because that's all what I'm going to be calling it from now on. Mathilde is already well known in the art world, and BCAD practically begged her to enroll. She is also an enclave, quote unquote, which is pretty much upper class, and she protested against the buffers, which were art style pieces that separated the lower and upper classes, which I'm still a little confused on how that works exactly. So these pieces of art with these screens are just plopped down into cities and it separates the lower and upper class. Nobody can walk around it or something. I don't really get that.
Well, I
think it's well explained either.
I thought they were like art. I didn't think that they were screens. I thought they were like,
Well, I thought they had screens on them because at one point they talk about they didn't want people to see through them because they didn't want people that like the people that are lower class to see what the upper class are doing or why it's better or something.
interesting.
So I thought they had like some kind of TV screens on them or something like that.
I imagined like some kind of fancy sculptures that were just like, I don't know. But then also, I mean, they didn't, when they first installed them, they didn't know that it was to
Right.
separate the lower class and the middle class, because she was like, we were so excited to get these art pieces in our neighborhood. And then
Right.
turns out that's what they were doing, because then it wasn't even until like Mathilde was the one to be the first one to
Right. To figure out what they were. Yeah.
figure out what they were, which is why they wanted her to enroll. That was like the big thing that she did. So yeah, very, very interesting.
Inca is a fringe or lower class, and she's from Gainesville, Florida. And she had to get a scholarship from the Dow Corporation to attend BCAD. Inca finds Mathilde, that's going to fuck me up every time.
Maddie.
Because I was calling it in my head Matilda, though, like halfway through the first section. And I'm like, I shouldn't have looked it up. I just should have ran with it. Then I looked it up and saw that it was Mathilde. And now I'm all jacked up.
That's okay.
All right. So while they're both freshmen, and Inca finds Mathilde in a bathroom stall one night crying and bleeding from splinters, which is coming from the wood she's using for her art piece. So they're all working on this one piece of art that they have to show as their freshman, I guess, capstone or whatever. Yeah. Inca starts watching Mathilde through the window of Mathilde's studio for weeks and leaves a handprint on the window each time. They become quick friends, and we find out that Inca is a technology artist while Mathilde is a sculptor.
Yes, and I'll take this opportunity to talk about Inca a little bit, because her whole backstory is very intriguing to me. Yeah, well, first of all, she's a technology artist out of necessity, because that's the only way she could go to the school, because she's a painter. She wants to paint.
Right.
She wanted to be a painter. She couldn't afford to go to the school. Her parents weren't supporting her as an artist. And the only way she could go to the school was to get this scholarship. But in order to get the scholarship, she had to do technology art. So she's a technology artist out of necessity. She's only doing it to have gotten into that school so she can at least do art. And it's the only way she could have gotten into that school. There was like no other way for her to go to this school. Yes, her parents don't support her. I like that her parents, I don't like this, but I like what's happening in the story. I like that her parents don't support her because they grew so bitter with the arts, because the arts became something only for the upper class, right?
Right.
That's what happened. When they put in the buffers everywhere, all of the like art museums and like fun things to do, places to see, whatever, were always in the enclaves and not in the fringe. And so it sounded to me like before the buffers, her parents didn't hate art, but then now they did, because it seems more of like a snooty higher class thing, right? So because they can't enjoy it, they just hate it. I think that is excellent commentary on what happens in our society now. I think there are a lot of things that are seen as like higher class, including art, going to museums, all the way down to like the food that we consume. I think, there's this narrative that if you want to eat healthy, then you must be able to afford it. And that's because healthy food generally is more expensive. So it's made more for richer people, right? Which I could go into a whole thing about that and food insecurity and blah, blah, blah. But I like I liked that commentary, because that is something that definitely happens in our society right now. But her real love is oil painting. So society has trapped her into something that she's not totally passionate about for the sake of going to school for something she loves. And it's very interesting to me that it's technology too, right? Which we'll kind of get into later.
Right.
I also was thinking, we got a lot of background on the social system in this world, because I didn't realize going into this book that we were in another world. And it's very interesting to me because it's like we are in another world because these things are happening, but it still seems like it's happening in the same time period that we're in now.
Right. It's like a multiverse kind of thing.
It's a multiverse kind of thing, which I said. I'm like, we're in another universe from ours that has slightly advanced more in technology than we have and has a different way of dividing the social structures. It's like a universe that's like very close to us, but it's not our
But
universe.
not exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which at first was confusing, but now that I'm in it, I'm like, okay, I like this. This is cool because I do love the idea of the multiverse. And it's such a cool way how she's doing it because there's still events that go on. Because also in this chapter, we get to Mathilde's, sorry, I'm going to steal your thunder, but Mathilde's father was killed in the 9/11 attacks. So that's where I got confused because I was like, okay, so we're in our world because they're not. And if that's the case, then like they have to be like my age at this point in time.
Right.
And
so, and it's like what science fiction is about. It's about taking our world and changing it slightly because certain technologies advance faster in what you're writing than our world.
Well, I like that this one is changed just like a little bit and not enough to where I didn't realize we were in another world until I realized we were in another world. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I was like, what? Huh? And then I was like, oh, this is just a universe that's like a stone's throw away from ours. So that's cool. I like that. But because it also feels like at the same time, like we're not far off from this, which is eerie, right? Because it's so close. So then it makes it's unsettling.
Yeah. And it's going to get closer.
I know. Because I feel like most of
some of the things that come up.
The science fiction books that I usually read are so different, or they're like set so far in the future.
Right.
Or they're like really, or some horrible thing has happened.
And so this is almost like a contemporary science fiction story.
Yeah. So I think that makes it even eerier because I'm like, oh, but we're really not far from this.
Right.
So I like that.
Technology-wise, we might be kind of far from some of it, but not all of it.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. So like you were saying, Mathilde's freshman exhibit is of her father made out of wood, sitting in a plane because her father was killed he was on one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center in the we're assuming that it's the World Trade Center. It could have been the plane in Pennsylvania or the one that hit the Pentagon. Who knows? That's not really said, but it's during the 9/11 attacks. Chapter 2.
Oh, well.
Go ahead.
Talk about the actual exhibit.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it kind of also gives you a look into Mathilde's character. Because the exhibit, I mean, God, it was like heart-wrenching. You had to go in and sit next to her wooden father and like comfort him in his last moments.
Oh, right. Because she did have some like recording of his last conversation on the phone.
Yeah, that you like put the headphones on and listened to that while you sat next to him, and she like expected you to comfort him in this art installation. So it's a very performative piece.
Right.
And she's very much like, as an artist, trying to get people to really like actually feel things, So I think which comes up kind of later, a later talking point that I have, because that was a lot. I was like, oh my God, this girl's crazy. And she is.
Yeah. It's like I don't really know of any artists that do that. I mean, I know there are some out there. I don't know any by name. The only one I can think of that is somewhat close, like Banksy kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Where sometimes he does things similar to that, but not as, I don't think they're even that crazy though.
No, they're not, because they're really just like spray paintings.
Yeah, sometimes they are. Like he had that one where it got sold at auction, and as soon as it got sold, it shredded itself.
Yeah. That was cool. That was really cool.
So he does things like that. So
it is like that, but I think she's more of in line of. Did you hear about that artist woman who like put herself in a box and then let people do whatever?
Oh yeah.
She she sat there in the room silent and then had like props, and you could do whatever you wanted to her.
Yeah.
And like the horrible things that people did to her were like crazy. Yeah. So that's kind of that's where I'm feeling Mathilde is at.
Right. All right. Chapter 2, Mathilde is going through a complete crash out after the exhibit. Inca has pretty much become her servant and is taking care of her, even deciding to stay with her during the summer break. Inca's parents get a buffer pass and come visit. Her parents are not big fans of art and don't really support Inca's ambitions. We find out Mathilde's mother is also dead. And at the end of the chapter, Inca and Mathilde are looking at some of Mathilde's pictures, but Mathilde doesn't want Inca to know about them. She just says they were from her parents' cactus farm and that this is part of my life, or that this part of my life is just for me. This will become important later on.
Yeah, and then Enka here in this chapter is already growing like super obsessive with Mathilde. Like it happened so fast, which doesn't bother me, but it makes me feel like maybe this is the kind of person that she just is in general. Like she just grows
Right.
so. I mean, she just completely takes over as like a caretaker role for her, and she's just like, and I know everything about her and the way I need the shape of her body and this, that, and the other. And I was like, oh my god, girl, that's creepy. But then Mathilde also likes it, I think, and for me, it kind of plays on their past traumas. Like Mathilde lost her
Right.
parents in horrible ways, and then Anka's parents don't support her, and she always felt like weird. So it's a very, very intense dynamic that they have at the very beginning, which I think does happen in college. I think at that age, it is easy for that to happen pretty quickly if you've already felt like an outsider. Because Inca feels like a huge outsider at this school, right? Because she's like one of the only people who's from the fringe who's there, and she's there only because of the scholarship that she has. That's really tough. That's a really tough feeling. It's not surprising to me that they've latched onto each other in this really intense kind of way. I also like this quote that the rumors would grow and solidify into something powerful enough to lock us into a paradigm we had no choice but to fulfill, one we wouldn't be able to escape. First of all, what an incredible sentence. This author is such a good writer. This author writes like how I write. I love the writing style. I'm obsessed. So I really love that imagery. I also was like, is this foreshadowing, like the roles that they're going to fulfill here at the end? Because in this, I think she's talking about how Mathilde's like the genius artist, Anka's the pretty one. And so she's worried that because that's kind of becoming their dynamic, that's what people are saying about them, that they're doomed to be stuck in those roles forever, which of course she doesn't want to be because she wants to also be an artistic genius, and she's jealous of that. And it also just talks how it is to be a woman in society and in careers, because that really does happen. I mean, if a beautiful woman walks in, most of the time, especially men will assume that she's the assistant, right? Like, this pretty girl, whatever, she can't be. Because women can't be smart and pretty. Like, you have to be one or the other. So
Right.
that felt like, I mean, yeah, truly, like that's what people think, and that's really how it is in career. And it's hard to be taken seriously as a woman, and I hate to say it, but especially if you're a beautiful woman, like people just don't really take you seriously. So I think that was like good commentary on that. So I wanted to talk about that. I also am kind of like, okay, so what is going to happen with that? I feel like there's going to be a lot of build on that. That just felt like such a lock us into a paradigm we had no choice but to fulfill. So I'm interested to see if that paradigm does get fulfilled in the end.
Chapter 3, we're going back to the present. So this is a short chapter, and we find out a few things here. Inca spends most of this chapter talking to someone named Polina. Mathilde has a foundation. Mathilde has been missing for almost a year. And Inca is now married because she mentions that something about her mother-in-law.
We also get a really good glimpse into the hierarchy of the art world here as well. The arts in general, especially once you get into the higher stakes, really are super like classist and snooty. And there's the foundations and the banquets and the this and the that. There's just there's a lot of ass kissing. There's a lot of ass kissing. I don't know specifically the art world, like in this book, the art world. I know in theater, which is a whole different form of visual art, but it's the same thing. The higher up you get, the more it becomes that kind of world, and you have to really like deep pockets, run the whole thing. I also this book is similar to the book that I read earlier that I really loved this year. Anita Demonte Laughs Last. It was also a book kind of like about the art world. It was really interesting that I'm reading 2 books this year about the hierarchies in the art world. But I do know that, like, as someone who did theater, there are a lot of things in there that I'm like, yeah, this, especially when they're in college. I'm like, yeah, I felt that way a few times. Like, yeah, I know exactly how that feels. And then also, I like this rhetoric on artists those days. I think Enka thinks this, that they're focusing more on concept than content and using the problems of the world for aesthetic rather than awareness. Because I guess in this, the thing that they're at is like this guy there's like the ancient peoples that were wiped out. He was like had a little bit of ancestry on them,
Right.
from them, and like made this whole exhibit about them. And she was thinking, like, wouldn't it be more important to talk about how we wiped them out as a society instead of putting them on display in this way to like boast how you were part, like, you know? I was like, God, that's so true. Because then she talks about too, she was like, in this world too, people stopped making art about climate change because at first it was like, oh yes, this is really important, like to be talking about the climate, but then it became so obsolete and the climate became so destroyed at that point that it was like anybody who did it was like, you could tell they were just kind of jerking off, right, to themselves. So, which is like, which is going on. So
Chapter 4, we go back to the past. We find out Polina, who she was talking to in the future there, is the curator for the Whitney Museum, because she calls and wants to talk to Mathilde about her 9/11 piece. Mathilde starts working at the Marriott Hotel. Inca is working on an art piece that has umbilical cords attached to video game equipment. Mathilde shows Inca what she's been working on for the Whitney. So the Whitney has commissioned Mathilde to create a piece of art. She had been working at the Marriott to steal Bibles. She didn't want to purchase them and subsidize a religious institution. So, yeah. I mean, I can think of some other ways to get those Bibles without actually having to go work at the Marriott, but okay.
Like she could just like walk into a church and take them.
Yeah, something. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're easy to get. You could also buy them at a used bookstore. You wouldn't be subsidizing a religious institution that way, at least.
Well, this was the only way she could do it. I also have a feeling too was to like she just seems like such a weirdo. She probably just like wanted also the work experience. Like I'm gonna maybe at some point she's gonna tear down the Marriott industry. Like who knows what she found out there, because she's an activist. So
right.
Like, who knows what her other motives were, but I get it.
So she encased these Bibles in acrylic grids with 2 silverfish, which are little bugs, and that would eat through the books and create a lattice work. It ends up being a big deal when it gets shown at the Whitney, and everybody likes it. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. It's kind of just showing how much of an activist she is. She's anti-religious, and she ended up selling each one of these grids that had a Bible that was chewed up, Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And I feel like she's such an activist. I almost feel like this in the book, this is like the last piece of work that she does that I would even consider art. And we'll get into it. But this was like, because at first I was like, yeah, she's an artist. And then once we hear about all the other stuff she starts doing, we'll get into, I'm like, is that art though?
Yeah, it is. Anyway, all right, here's the big one. Chapter 5, Artificial Intelligence Artwork. So students at Caltech created a generative software that can create art called the Stochastic Archive. Apparently in this world, you can copyright generative created art. So this made me look it up and see what's going on in our world. And here's what I found. So in May 2023, the U.S. Copyright Office concluded that you can copyright works made with AI, but it has to have human authorship, quote unquote. They have a crazy definition of this too. So like a human may select or arrange the AI generated material in a creative way. So it just seems such bullshit to me. Then in March 2025, a U.S. appeals court rejects copyrights for AI-generated art. So this case was a little different. This case was where there was no human authorship involved, and the piece of art in question was just fully generated by AI. So if you create a piece of art with AI, as long as you take those parts of it and rearrange it a little bit, I guess it's fine, which, that makes no sense to me. So anyway, that's going to get appealed, I'm sure, as well. I think that's what it said in the article. So it's still up in the air at this point. So this is probably going to be a controversial issue going forward. And I'm sure some of this was probably inspiration for the author of this book.
Yeah, terrible. And it just ruins everything. It ruins everything for them.
Yeah. So what this means for students at BCAD, they will have to make sure none of their artwork has already been created by AI. And Inka found something similar to her umbilical project in this stochastic archive, and she has to scrap it. Inka goes home for the summer after their sophomore year, and Mathilde is invited to the Venice Biennale. Chapter 6. You have anything to say about that?
Sure. No, I think it was crazy when the professor was telling them about it, and the professor was like, "You either got to get rid of it because we are not paying for any legal fees. Right. Like, if you want to battle this, you can, but we're not helping you." Which I thought was so sad too, because I'm sure there were people there who could afford to battle certain things and like hire the lawyers and do all of that, and then there were certain people there who couldn't. Although,
like Inka obviously couldn't.
Oh, right. Like, so it's like you already had the stacks, everything stacked up against you. And now this is just like awful. So that made me really sad for everybody. And how this is like, something that is happening now, it's a tough time for art.
Yes, it is. Yep. Because you can just look about anywhere and there's AI pictures and videos and bullshit everywhere at this point. Chapter 6. Going back to the present, we get a glimpse of this world and how advanced it is. There's a part talking about a woman who had her spinal joints replaced with ball joints.
Yeah, and the ballet dancers that were cross-mutated with swans.
Yeah, that's weird.
That was crazy. They were like, she was like, they were dancing and squawking, and the piano player had webbed fingers.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Could you cross-mutate back? I was like, I hope they can go back to being real people. Like, for one performance at this art banquet, that's stupid. That's insane.
Yeah, but I think this is just trying to show, the difference in our world and how more advanced technologically that this world is. Yeah,
but that was such a crazy thought that the author had. I was like, whoa, that's a crazy brain thought.
We find out a little more about Inka in the present time. She mentions that she has kids, so I'm not sure how far in the future in this present compared to the past portions are. And we find out in a subtle way that she has married into the doll family. She's talking to a fellow named Otto who asked her a question about a doll project, and she says, "That's a question for my father-in-law." All right, so moving on to chapter 7. These present chapters are not very long right now. I think they get a little longer later. But anyway, chapter 7, while in Italy, Mathilde has worked on another project called He is Risen. She was going into confessionals, and she would start dirty talking to the priest and get him aroused. And then she would open the priest's door and snap a photo of the priest with an erection. I think that's hilarious.
I think that is also hilarious and amazing. Do I call that art? I don't know. Do I call it investigative journaling? Yeah, sure.
You could go either way, I think.
But I don't know if that's art.
All she has to do now is take those pictures and arrange them a certain way, and it's art.
Sure. This one I had blurred lines on, but part of me is kind of like, this just feels like something I would do for fun.
Yeah, just for the funniness of it.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be like, I'm going to make a whole exhibit out of this. I'd just be like, this is silly. And then I would just like post them on Instagram. But is posting on Instagram art? Who's to say? It kind of is. As long as it's not AI, I would consider it art.
photography is art, right?
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
the whole story behind it, though. It's like how she got them to that point and then took pictures of them, I
Yeah.
think, is that's where the photos themselves, art, sure. The going in there and doing the whole like thing of it,
The means to get them, yeah.
yeah, was kind of where I'm like, that feels like trying to expose. That feels like exposed. That feels like investigative journalism to
Yeah.
me. So,
I mean, I guess.
but is that
Yeah.
art?
Either
Is
way, it's funny.
investigative journalism art?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it is, I think, in a way.
Yeah, sure. But
I
yes,
mean, anything that you can create is pretty much art.
Mhm. Okay.
I don't know. That's just my point of view.
Well, there's like a whole. I mean, it's the whole debate, like right, like what
Writing.
is
I mean,
art?
writing. Like if you're investigative journalism, you're writing something, you're taking pictures, now the investigating portion of it may not be considered art, but the rest of it I think would be.
Sure.
But I don't know, I mean, that's really just research for art. So
Maybe. I don't know if that was research though. Was she researching? She was like actively doing something. And it's interesting to me that she's doing it as art. I guess what it is too is the intention behind it. Like she's doing it as art versus like I said, if I did that, I wouldn't necessarily be doing it to create art. I would just do it because it's funny.
right.
Because I was
I
like,
don't know.
yeah, let me expose these priests, So I think that the intention behind it, but that's what's also interesting to me is how she does all of it, which okay, we'll talk about it later, but she's doing all of these things and her intention is art, but is it art?
Either way, it's hilarious.
No, that was great. I loved that. I mean, I was like, I my jaw dropped. I like had to stop and laugh because that was awesome.
All right, so her piece that she's working on for the Venice Biennale was called Umbilical. And Inca thinks that Mathilde got inspiration for this piece from Inca's piece she was working on before they heard about the stochastic archive. So it's the piece where she was making umbilical cords connected to like Game Boys and stuff.
Yeah, old video games.
Yeah.
Which I also was like, yeah, that's pretty suspicious. I'd also
Yeah, it is.
quite
It is.
suspicious. Mhm.
Although the piece of artwork that Mathilde made was
It was very different.
way different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
I
was
didn't really go into what it was, but
very, very different. But
yeah.
definitely inspired. But then that kind of because Mathilde also says earlier when they're like, or maybe it's not even Mathilde says at one point talking about the stochastic thing, she's like, it's just silly because all art is inspired from something, right? Like we're all
Yeah.
inspiring each other and we're all inspired by other things all the time. So
Yeah.
why does it matter? So I think that kind of was like showing her point in that too, of like, no, if you're inspired by something, you're inspired by something and you can create something completely different, even though you have little inspirations from the thing that inspired you,
Yeah.
which I would agree with. I mean, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look at,
It's like,
James. The
yeah.
book
Right.
James.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Yeah.
inspired by Huckleberry Finn. There were a lot of the same things going on in that book because was the inspiration for that book. Is that plagiarism?
It's like in Seinfeld, Elaine tells her old boss that she likes muffin tops. She just eats the top of the muffin, and then he goes and makes a muffin top store.
Right. See, now that's annoying, though. That's actually annoying.
All right, chapter 8. So we can see a bit of jealousy here from Inca about Mathilde. During an interview, Mathilde mentioned she would like to work with Pathway Labs on a technological art piece. This sparks Inca's interest, and she looks it up. She finds a video with Logan Dahl talking about a project called Scaffold that will put you into someone else's mind. She looks up Logan Dahl, and we see that he is the son of Richard and Monica Dahl of the Dahl Corporation, where she gets her scholarship. And now we can put, one and one together and realize that that's who she ended up marrying in the present time. She writes to Pathway Labs and eventually gets accepted to join the test of scaffold. She meets with Logan, who then tells her she can't be tested as she was a doll fellow and it would look like favoritism. And instead, he invites her to come to Argentina to make an art project based on scaffold. And, you know, she got to ride on his private jet.
Right. She's feeling the lap. This is her first taste of luxury. Right. That's so true.
Yeah.
She's like being whisked away and, you know, people are asking her all of these things. And yeah, so this is where we start to see a little change in character, maybe.
Yeah. All right. So we go to Argentina. I titled this chapter, Don't Bleat for Me, Argentina.
I saw that.
Yeah. I was just trying to be funny. So while in Argentina, a man that was part of the scaffold testing ran off because they had put a goat's mind in his and the goat had been slaughtered. So the way this stuff works is it kind of gives you empathy towards the other mind that was put in you. So when the man found out that the goat was slaughtered, he kind of went crazy. So he goes crazy and he runs off and he runs into Inca. And because of this, Logan canceled her project and she left because of all of the media blowback he was going to get on this.
Right.
School started back up, and we find out that a lot of people have dropped out of schools, all of her classmates, because of the stochastic archive.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about scaffold for a second, too. Because it's crazy to me because he's like, yeah, the whole thing is that we're trying to use technology to connect people together, right? Because we're using technology right now to disconnect people.
Mm-hmm.
Have we gotten into... Yeah, because when she did research on the doll family, we get into like his dad, how his dad was the creator of the buffers. Right. Yeah. And how he like almost committed suicide because of all the backlash he was getting, right? But basically it's cool how his dad was using art and technology to separate people, and he's trying as kind of like maybe a redemption to bring technology to bring people together, and he's trying to create these like empathy things, like let's connect minds so that we can perceive the world how the other person is perceiving, so we can understand them a little bit better, right? And understand each other. So Logan's character is quite, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it because it feels...
But he seems to be a little bit against it, against like the buffer and stuff.
Well, he seems to.
Seems. I said seems. Yeah, we don't know for sure.
Well, he seems to. And there's only so much. I mean, you know, there's only so much. He's already in a very like high society. Like there's only so much he knows. He doesn't know anything else than being rich, right? So it's kind of like...
He's like a gold. If you want to think about Red Rising, he doesn't know.
He's like Cassius.
Yeah.
He has the potential to be a Cassius, but I'm curious to know if he will become a Cassius. Because, you know, Cassius has his redemption arc in the end. So I don't know if Logan will. I don't have high hopes for this rich white boy, but we'll see.
Okay. So Mathilde asks Inca to come to Paris with her as she is going to set up her foundation that we had found out about in the present, one of the present chapters. Inca doesn't go and she decides to give up on art.
Yes, which is such a tough thing. You know, we're in this world now, this world in the book, but also our world now where we're having to adapt to technology, you know, because it's advancing so fast. It's advancing faster than we're advancing, even though we're the ones creating it, which is the scary part of it, right? Right. And so now we are the ones who are having to adapt to it and then figuring out, well, how does this work out legally? You know, what does this mean for copywriting? And like, what does this mean for this, that, and the other? So now it's all happening so fast and they're just putting it out there so fast that now we're all having to adapt to that.
Yeah. And really, in the end, it's not going to matter because the world will be destroyed by AI, and Sarah Connor was right all along.
Sarah Connor was right. So true. Yeah. So not only are they all dealing with that, but Enga at the same time can't keep up. Was already having a hard time keeping up without this, right?
Right.
because she didn't have all of the resources that all of her other classmates had from the start.
Right, because part of the buffer thing is they kind of cut off the parts of the internet to the lower class as well, the fringe people.
They cut off so much stuff from the lower class. And so, because she talks about too, like they all know all of these different artists and I have no idea who they are. And I keep creating things that are copies of these artists. I'm not having original thoughts, right? But I didn't know. I didn't know that those things had already been created because I wasn't given access to that information. So she's already before the stochastic thing was already having a hard time. This happens, and it is really it's an awful feeling, you know, because you're already behind from the start because of circumstances that were outside of your control. And that really is how it is in the art world, and that's how it was in the theater world. When I was in school, when I was in college, I couldn't practice as much as like my peers could because I had to work. Like I had to work every weekend. I had to work 16 hours a weekend on top of all of the school and homework and stuff. And I remember I would always constantly be getting compared to my peers and like, why am I not progressing as much as they are? And I'd be like, well, because they don't pay their own rent. They don't pay for their own groceries. Like their parents paid for everything. And it's not their fault, but the fact that I had to be pulled, like I came in behind because I didn't have all of the resources that my peers had. And that is tough. Like that is awful. It is an awful, awful feeling. And then to say, I remember too, at one point I said that. I was like, well, I have to work. And they're like, well, you're always going to have to work. And I was like, well, my peers aren't working though. It's like, that's not true because my classmates that you're comparing me to are not working. So that doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, anyway, the point of that is that I've really felt for her in that moment, and having to decide to give up on something that you love because of things that are outside of your control, which that's not the whole reason why I stopped doing theater, but it was a big part of it because it was happening when I was doing theater out in the real world too. It's just so disheartening. So that is so everyone be aware that happens because these systems are very elitist. The art world is very elitist. And now we have technology that we have to fight against too.
Yep. Sorry.
That's fine. I'm cool now. I'm moving to Australia.
All right, chapter 10. Logan gets in touch with Inca, asking her to make a scaffold art piece again, and Inca agrees to do it. So she had given up on art, and then when Logan comes and asks her to make this scaffold art piece, she says, all right, fine. She creates a piece using brains. The piece is called Neon Seance, and it becomes a minor national sensation. Logan offers Inca the position of artist in residence at Pathway Labs. They end up falling in love. Logan proposes, she accepts, and they set a wedding date. She had been ignoring Mathilde all this time, and she started feeling guilty and ended up inviting her to the wedding.
Yeah, I put on here, there was a quote in the book. It said, it's bisexual lighting. So in her neon seance, it was like the brains were all lighting up different colors.
Oh, right. I remember.
And people were trying to figure out, people didn't really know at first what was going on. And she was worried that people wouldn't know what you were supposed to feel from it, right? She was really nervous about that. And then once people started getting into it, they started shouting a bunch of things, trying to figure out like what it means. And I thought it was really funny because one of the brains lit up purple. And somebody yelled, it's bisexual lighting, which you probably wouldn't understand this reference because
I'm not bisexual.
Because you're a 50-something-year-old white man.
Okay.
But there was...
Hold that against me.
Well.
Go ahead.
No, because there was, I think maybe this probably was on like TikTok or something, but for some reason it became, if you had purple lights in your room at any point in time in your life, you were probably bisexual. Like bisexuals have purple lighting. And it's really funny because I remember too, when I first moved to Bushwick and I would look out my window at night and you see into everybody's apartments and there would be like so many apartments with purple lighting. And I was like, all these bisexuals in Bushwick. I was like, I think it's true. Like purple lighting is bisexual lighting. So I thought that was really funny. I was like, this author must be very close in age to me because that's hilarious. And then also just, it was funny to me too, because it was funny how they were trying to maybe make the piece like something about queerness. You know what I mean? Like they were like, this has to mean something so deep, right? This has to mean like what is she commenting on? Is she commenting on bisexuality and the brain? So that's also why I thought that was funny, because why is somebody yelling bisexual lighting at this exhibit? And then also there's an interview in this chapter, right? Where the interviewer starts popping off on Anka about her being her being a fringe kid, right? Her being from the fringe, and like, I can't believe you would be doing this because the dolls stand. How, it actually was really cool because the interviewer says something like, "You're his worst nightmare," like a fringe kid coming up and being a success, right?
Right.
Which that was crazy. Like you're what he was trying to prevent, and now you're working with him. And Angus says something, she really says something super, in the moment, I was surprised at how she was able to compose such a sentence that she said. And I don't remember what it was, but it was in that moment where she just becomes straight up a bootlicker. Like she was like, well, actually, if the buffers hadn't been there, then I wouldn't have had the experiences that I had. So really, I have them to thank for that, And I was like, damn. I was like, here we go. She's falling into the trap. She's a bootlicker now. She's falling into the trap because she's like, now she's like in love with Logan, and she's experiencing all of these fancy things, and
it seems like
propelling her art.
Some of the present chapters, you get this feeling that they were using Mathilde for something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah, and we haven't really gotten into that yet, but it just seems like they were using her for something, and it kind of backfired when she disappeared or something.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on there yet. We don't know yet.
Yeah. But you can also tell in those present chapters that Anka's kind of like getting the fuck over all of it, right? She's like, what have I done? Like, this is terrible. These people are awful, But it's like, girl, you let yourself get that way, and we see it right here, right? Like this quote that you just said in this interview just sealed your fate to me. And you are now complicit in what's going on, even though you were oppressed by it at one point. But now that you've tasted all of it, now it's like, and propelling your artwork, and making her famous. Now it's like, oh no, this is actually really great. And I'm really grateful that I was a fringe kid. It's like, that's not what you were saying in college. Because even after, she's like, and I don't think I actually believed what I said, but I said it. So, and also just like a whole touch on capitalism in general, right? Like this idea that you can pick yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Like, look, now it's like, you don't have an excuse. You don't get to make excuses about your circumstances because she did it.
Right.
Because she made it work. And she was a fringe kid, even though it was all luck. It was all luck for her. Right.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it always? Luck has a lot to do about everything.
And then
being in the right place at the right time.
Right. But then also being like, I don't know, maybe being pretty, because the whole thing was like, oh, Logan was like, oh, I loved you. I really liked you from the moment I met you. And then she even thinks like, well, is that why he called me again to do the art for the brains? Because he just like liked me. You know what I mean?
Instead of calling her because he thought she was a good artist.
She'd actually a good artist, right? No, she was like, was this just like a motive because he liked me? Which I think is something that will be a hot topic in this book. And then that proposal was crazy. I didn't like the proposal. They'd only been dating for 3 months, and it was so extravagant. I would have said no. That's my personal opinion on the proposal. And then I thought it was also really funny when the mom was like, let's order crab. They're extinct. Gotta get them while we can.
I mean, if there's crabs available, how can they be extinct?
Well, I guess because they're extinct except for the ones that they've preserved, maybe for fancy restaurants. That's what I was thinking. Like, there are still like some in stock in the high-end restaurants, right?
Right.
Like maybe they're all captive and they're just eating the rest of them, but only rich people can because they're extinct. I thought that was hilarious. And then, so yeah, I guess we talk more about I guess in this chapter they talked more about Mathilde's pieces. Yeah, because she did this piece on private prisons.
Oh, right, the private prison one.
The
Yeah, that
private-
was interesting. I didn't put that in here.
The private prison one. That's where I was like, now is that art or is that just humanitarian, or is that just being an activist?
I think it's just a little bit of everything.
I just felt like because she was like I mean, I don't know. To me, that didn't.
Right. So
feel
the gist
like,
of it was she started a private prison and made a deal with the United States to, which is what we have nowadays, and it's completely pathetic. And this was her commentary on it, because she made the private prison a luxury cells that these prisoners were kept in. And
I think what's mind-blowing to me, and maybe this is where I'm trying to get at, is that when she does it as this world-class artist, because it's like art in this society, but also our society is on a higher level, is seen as, higher class. Because she's doing it and presenting it as art, it's more important than if somebody who just was an activist was doing it. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, wow, this is art. When in reality, it's just being a good person and just being an activist. But if she was just going around saying, I'm an activist, it would be different. But because she's this like world famous artist, it's like, no, this is art. And now we have to start doing this. And
if Greta Thunberg had made that boat she was on there this past week's an art piece.
Greta Thunberg was an artist, was a world-renowned film director, and was like, I'm making a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Then
it would be different than what it turned out to be.
And I think that Mathilde knows that, and I think that's why she's doing what she's doing. I think she's like, you know what, obviously she's got mental issues, but like, I think she knows, because she was the one who called out the buffers in the first place. So I'm like, I think she really wants to be an activist, but she's using this pretentious art world to do the work that she actually wants to do, which is really smart, if true.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my point. And like, is what she's doing really art? And sure it is, but is she only doing it as art, like her intention behind it, just to like actually spread awareness to rich people? Because that's the only way that they'll listen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good theory. I like it. All right, chapter 11, back to the present. Inca makes a speech about the new wing named in her honor. She thinks she sees Mathilde in the back, loses it and runs off. She runs into an old professor who talks to her about jealousy and says she thinks Inca handled it well with Mathilde.
And then I think also in these chapters, we do get a lot of her kind of regretting her decisions too, right?
Yeah.
Kind of regretting how she got there. Because everybody there is like they don't really seem to care that she's missing. They're more concerned about the money that they're losing because she's missing. And so when her old professor is there and who is also upset, she's like, thank God there's at least one other person here that's actually has some shred of humanity left in them.
Chapter 12, we go back to the past. Inca and Logan are getting married. Mathilde shows up to the ceremony pregnant. It's part of her new art piece she's working on, where she, along with a lab in Switzerland, created a way for a woman to get pregnant without a man. And it's kind of funny what it's named. So I don't remember exactly what the name of it was, but it was an acronym for sperm.
Right. Yeah. Again, art or activism? Who's to say?
Yeah, this one really doesn't seem like art to me, but we don't know where she's going with it at the end either yet.
That's where you draw the line.
Yeah.
That's when
you start replacing men, that's where I draw the
line. You're like, that's not art.
No, but I'm just saying we don't know where she's going with it at the end.
No,
so
I know. Yeah.
It could still be art.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens. All right, chapter 13, we go back to the present again. Bosk, who is the artist that's being shown for this opening of this new wing, he gets on stage, or she, I don't think they said whether it was a he or she, gets on stage and starts acting a fool.
I actually pictured a gay man, personally.
Yeah, I kind of did too, yeah.
I pictured a very gay a very gay man, because this performance was really giving
crazy.
gay.
But then he starts crying and all kinds of stuff. That's why I said he starts acting a fool.
Yeah, not because he's crying, but just the actual, like, the dramatics of it, and then the show.
Right.
And then he shows the video, and like, please help my friend, my mentee. And I'm like, and it's obviously just for clout, right? It's obviously just for clout.
Yeah, so he shows a video of Mathilde, and Inca had already seen this video on Paulina's phone back in chapter 3. But now that it's up on a big screen, she can see more detail. And Inca realizes where Mathilde is, and she's at her parents' cactus farm. And that's where the chapter ends. And that's the last chapter. That's the end of part 1, early style.
I could read this book in a whole day. I'm pretty sure. If I had a whole day, I would read this from start to finish. I really like it that much. And it's not long.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's not long. It's only going to be a 3-episode series for us.
Right.
Because it's only a little over 300 pages. I think it's like 320 or something.
Yeah, I would 100%. If I had a whole day to just sit down and read a book, it would be this one for sure.
I looked up Ling Ling Huang because you were wondering how old she is, and I still don't know. I can't tell you because she doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. This is only her second novel, but she does look fairly young. She's Taiwanese. She lives in America, though, now, but she was born in Taiwan. But she looks pretty young from her picture, but it's hard for me to tell. I'm not good at guessing ages.
Sure.
Yeah. No Wikipedia, so there's not a whole lot of information out there on her.
Typed in Ling Ling Huang age.
But she did. She was the winner of the Lambda Literary Award for bisexual fiction.
Was she a member of the K-pop group?
What K-pop group? Which one?
Kiiras? Kiiras?
I have no idea. It doesn't say anything about that. What I'm seeing of her, because I'm on the Penguin Random House page of her biography. It's very short. She's a writer and a violinist, and she plays with several ensembles, including the Oregon Symphony, Grand Teton Music Festival Orchestra, and the Pro Musica Chamber Orchestra.
Okay.
And she won a Grammy Award in 2021.
Oh, wow.
Her debut novel, Natural Beauty, was a Good Morning America Buzz pick and a New York Times Editor's Choice. And that's what she won the Bisexual Fiction Award for. It's called Natural Beauty. So yeah, not a lot out there about her really that I could find anyway. Ask AI, maybe that'll help.
Well, that's where I went wrong, because I forgot to put no AI, and it was the AI overview that was like Ling Ling Huang, Wang Ling Ling, a member of the K-pop group.
Yep, it screwed it all up.
I'm like, that's not. I was like, I don't think that's right.
See,
that's right. She has an Instagram. Did you look at her Instagram?
I did not.
She's a mom. She's got a baby.
I didn't look at her Instagram. All right. Well, that wraps up part 1.
That's it for this week's episode of Dad and Daughter Reads, a book club podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us as we kicked off Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. Next week, we'll be diving into part 2, middle style, so be sure to read along and come back for more discussion. We love to hear your thoughts, so hit us up on social media. You can find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and in our Discord, all linked in the show notes. Thanks for listening and happy reading.
Our intro music is Upbeat Funk, performed by Mikhail Smusev, and our outro music is Lo-Fi Chill, medium version, performed by Bodan Kuzmin. You can find both tracks on pixabay.com. Thanks for joining us, family, and we'll see you next week.